Hey guys, welcome to What Could Go Wrong live with my very favorite guest, Julie. We had, an experience earlier today when
Multiple
working on
experiences.
multiple experiences.
Multiple.
And an hour later, we have landed on a functioning situation. And so
Yeah.
we're going to have our conversation, darn it, because we are dedicated humans.
Because we're going to overcome this situation. Okay. We do not accept failure.
We do not accept failure. We only learn from failure. Okay. This is who
Yeah.
we are. And that's why the show is called what it's called. That's why we're here. And for an even better layer into our story, we're talking about ideal self versus real self. So we've ideally wanted to do these things, and in reality, we had different things happen. So be sure
in the
to
ideal world. Yeah, it would have been beautiful and worked the first
beautiful had it worked the first time. But I really feel like now we can say go back and watch that 12-minute situation, because then you can compare.
The attempts at lip reading. Yeah.
You can compare.
Can you hear me now?
Ideal versus real. Like, I'm gonna let Julie in. I can't see your face. I'm gonna let Julie back out. Let's try this one. Oh wait, there's Julie.
It was a lot of attempts. Isn't that a little bit like life? Sometimes you just keep hitting the same wall until you find the door.
It's so much the same. And it's a glass wall. So you're like, oh, it's not there. No, it's
it is
there.
It is there. Yeah. Yeah, it was very frustrating.
It's totally fine. So Julie is important for so many reasons, but for one of them, because she was my very first guest on What Could Go Wrong Live. Twice we did that. And it was like, I remember we were in a chat and it was just like, hey, I have LinkedIn Live. We should do something, right? And it was kind of like, yeah, why not? Totally. And that was where it all started, where it all began 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And so that is obviously the most important part about you, but you go ahead and fill in like the less important
I love that. I love that. My most important part are these beautiful moments that frustrated the heck out of me, that you're like, it's fine. Don't apologize. You're such a beautiful human being. Oh my gosh. I love it so much. Well, hi, my name is Julie Schniers. To everybody, thank you for actually watching this after I have been probably frustrating you. I told my husband, I was like, you don't understand. There were people on live and they couldn't see me or hear me. Like, I hate it so much. Anyway, to the other important parts. Okay, so I'm actually the director of schools and college relations at Angelo State University. I get to do that part-time. And then I am also a coach and consultant and speaker. And I love that piece. My initial charge given to me by my heart was I wanted to speak and consult in the world of education about how teachers can be better relationship builders, because I know that teachers are the very front lines of helping our students with the rise in mental health issues, with the rise in broken homes. And then COVID happened and that amplified even more. And the reality is, not everybody, whether it be a teacher in the classroom or an administrator to teacher, are thinking through the realm of relationships are most important, and then my classwork, right? Because it's really flipped, okay? And so we talked about that last time when we visited. But then what happened to me was businesses were like, can you come in? We've got some issues with the people in our staff. And I'm like, yeah, of course. You know why? Because relationships are a people thing. They're everywhere. So it's really grown me. I've gotten to work with some executives in the coaching and consulting world. I've gotten to speak to some organizations and women in business, and, just neat little businesses that have brought me in. So that's what I do in the me time. But what that really means is that I keep digging into just people and how do we help make relationships better? But one of the most important relationships, and what we're going to talk about today, is the relationship with your own head and heart.
Yeah. That's a scary one.
It is for me. I mean, like I've had to do a lot of work on myself to even get to this point.
Seriously.
I mean, seriously.
I mean, that's real. And I was reading the other day, I think it was Mel Robbins, who was talking about the most recent research. I love Mel Robbins. Like, she's one of my top favorite people, right? But the recent research shows that the highest indicator for happiness, which was previously like gratitude, right, is now being shown to be self-acceptance.
Whoa.
Like,
but how true is
that's a big deal. Oh, so true. And that's such a big thing. And to go off on a little side trail for just a second, is so many times we are taught, and this may be more so women, this may be more so dependent upon your religious beliefs, but for me specifically, so oftentimes we were taught to this concept of it's okay, even encouraged, to set yourself on fire to keep the people around you warm. And while there is always a beautiful value to lifting up the people around you and putting others before yourself and those types of things, there is a point where it becomes detrimental to your own self and your self-acceptance and your, self-love and all those types of things.
Right.
And so I think that is a big balance, and even a shift that we're starting to see in this whole self-love, movement, if you will, this concept of putting self-love first, which can sound counter things we may have learned as children, where it's like always everybody else before yourself. But what is the whole, like the age old, when you get on a plane, you put your own mask on first, and then you help people around you.
I talk about it. Yes.
And that has to be real. But I know for me, that can be hard to balance, of like not setting myself on fire to keep other people warm, but still taking care of the people around me.
Right. And not only that, but where is your mental state in these moments that you're having to make decisions for yourself?
Yeah.
And I know that truth is, I mean, I have kids, I have a family, and I have, a job that isn't just getting to do my speaking and consulting that I'm also passionate about. So I know that there are moments in our decision-making process that we have to think about others. I'm with you on that, but there is a line. And then when you find that line and you decide what that line is going to be, being able to say, I'm okay with that, and I'm not going to feel guilty. I think that's another piece. But one of the things that I really want to kind of dig into today, which links exactly to this, is, have we given up on letting ourselves dream big?
Yeah.
That's the root of it. Okay. So what we're shouting out about is the ideal self versus the real self. And I want to start with this book. It's Helping People Change. Okay. And there's 3 authors. I don't know if you can see those. But Helping People Change. I love this book. In this book, and it's not the only document that I have that has breaking up the differences between real self and ideal self that really kind of made me start digging. But it is one that you can easily get your hands on, and I'm super passionate about. And this was kind of a light bulb moment when I was reading this, in how it links to me and so many people that I'm even working with. In real self mode, like, who are we? What are you capable of? What are you wanting to do? Or what are you actually doing? Right. So real self is, I'm going to do this job as an accountant, because I would hate that job. So we're going to use that. I'm sorry to every accountant that's like, this is my passion and love. Okay. But I'm going to say that because that would be something that would be obligatory.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, I'll do it for money so that my children can eat. Okay.
Right.
So, okay. So I'm going to be an accountant because my dad said he'd pay for college if I was an accountant. And that's what I'm going to be because my mom was an accountant, and that's what we do in our family, right? Like, real self. I support my family and have a roof over my head. And this is what I look like. And this is what I drive. And this is what I do on my weekends, because this is real self. Versus ideal self is like, okay, let's pretend for 2 seconds. And this is an exercise that I love doing with clients. If you had all the money in the world and you had all the support in the world, no one's going to say, that's stupid, Julie, right? And you were able to do anything, what would you do with your life?
Yeah.
If you had those 3 pieces, what would you dream up? And I know that there's this ideal world and this real world. Like, I would love to be able to jump out of planes. That would be fun. That's not true. That's not me. But if that was what I wanted to do, but I'm fearful of heights, like, okay, maybe we need to reconsider and like look at that gap. Okay. So when you're looking at ideal self and real self, you're going, okay, what is the gap? How do we cross the gap? And what are places that we can't close the gap and places that we can't, but get you as close to your happy ideal self. But we live in a world where we have forgotten to dream big. We live in a world where ideal self doesn't always make sense. So, which is fine, but we start shutting doors. We start shutting windows. And then we forget to dream.
Yeah. The limiting beliefs that we start placing on it.
Yes. And then we build support for those beliefs that limit us so that they get heavier and heavier and heavier until we've forgotten to believe in ourselves at all and who we could be.
Yeah.
I think there's so much value to letting yourself look into what you could actually build with your real self. These are my real talents. These are my real skills. These are my real passions. This is my real time crunch. Like I need to be able to do these pieces for my kids, but this piece exists for me, right? This is real. How can I bridge this gap between my real self and my ideal self, but letting myself dream? And I'll tell you something, when I changed careers, that's when I realized I had a problem.
Yeah.
Eek. Like, here goes my openness. I'm being authentic and real, and sometimes it hurts, but okay. So I learned, like, I am talented in a lot of ways, but I had told myself, this is what you do, Julie. This is who you are, and this is what you do. And you know what? I may in 5 years go, X, Y, and Z didn't work, right? I may in 5 years go, well, I'm in a new place than I never could have imagined, which is kind of where I am now.
Yeah.
But that took me jumping off a cliff into ideal self world and going, okay, I'm going to try to fill some of these gaps. But I had to push that muscle in my mind to let myself think through what does ideal self look like? How do I get there? How hard am I willing to push to give myself that chance and dream big?
Yeah. And that's really hard. And in the moments in our first round at this, while you were popping in and out, like I gave my concept of this ideal self versus real self. And part of that for me is if you're able to really sit with your real self, right? I was saying that so often we're projecting ourselves forward or we're projecting ourselves backwards and we're missing what's happening right now. Because it can be very challenging to be present with who you are right now, especially if you have these big goals and big dreams and all of that, and you're focused on the goal rather than the journey to get there, right? And that's something we want our learners or people that we're working with to really understand is that, have that goal, but don't miss out on who you are now. And I think that's a really big issue. And I know that I've really struggled with this is allowing myself to be present in right now instead of only projecting forward, and also finding self-acceptance and self-love inside of the present version of myself. Like my real self right now can be really hard because we just keep looking forward and saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. And that can be, the downside of these dreams. And so I think it has to be this balance between, yes, I'm going to this place and I'm going to love every version of myself that is kind of created along the way and being present in that moment. And I think that can be a really challenging part of it as well.
Well, one of the quotes that used to hang in my classroom was John Quincy Adams, and I hope I get this exactly right, but fail and try, just don't fail to try. Right.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I have talked about this before. The power of bringing that to our classrooms, the idea that a student can just, let's throw it out there. Let's throw it against the walls and see what sticks. Let's try. It may or may not work because we are conditioning. And this is not just our students in the classroom thing. This is a society thing. This is a highly driven, successful people thing, right? Like we are so worried about failure that we don't always launch what we could launch because there's that fear, right? That I'm safe in this real box and where I've been all this time. So I'm just going to stay right here. And then it makes me wonder though, what opportunities are we missing? what opportunities are we missing in our personal lives? What
Mhm.
opportunities are we missing in our classrooms?
Yeah.
What fires could we be lighting for kids that we're not exactly lighting because we're worried about checking a box,
Right.
right?
And who put that box there? I think that's another question. Like, is this a externally implemented box, some box that someone else has given us and said, you need to check this box? Or are we really able to reflect on that expectation and say, okay, you know what? I did put this box here and I want it here. So I want to check that. Or I did put this box here and I no longer need it. It no longer serves me and set it aside. And so understanding if it's externally, internally motivated is also a really important part. And you can't get to that place until you are present with yourself in that moment and able to really reflect on that.
Right. Which directly links to ideal self-success. Because if ideal self adventures are internally motivated, right? Like if I am motivating it from the inside, I feel like my gestures help paint pictures. So
They
that's what I
totally do. Like if I added paintbrushes to your hands,
Yeah.
like the
it would
things
be
that would
beautiful.
happen.
You can tell I was a theater kid, right? And then I coached in Terp. Okay, so when you're internally motivated, you're going to be more successful.
Yeah.
So then the question is, like you just said, is it being given to you? Is the box being given to you by somebody else? Is that an external, or is it being given to you by yourself?
Right.
And then, how let's look at your inside boxes and make sure that that's what you want them to be. Now, here's a question that I love talking about with you. Are you ready? I get this all the time. Every single time I post something, teachers are like, well, that's out of my control, right?
Oh, yeah.
I wish I could be that way. But these mandates, right, which I know that's true. I don't agree with everything that TEA has us do here in Texas. I know that across the board in the whole entire nation, there's educators that are struggling with the boxes that are being given to them from the external sources who may or may not even have been or be in the classroom currently, right?
Yeah, right.
So then how do you navigate that if we're going to push it to education, because I know that that's something that we both have in common? How do we help people who are frustrated about those external boxes that they have set this up in their head that, okay, then this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I mean, that's a mindset issue, right? I mean, because I was on a show last week sometime, and it was almost every single question that they asked me. It was like, well, mindset is the answer to that. There was one where relationship was the answer, but mindset really comes first. That's a different situation that, mindset, but that's a big thing for me is where's your mindset? Because all of us deal with these boxes that we have to live in, right? I mean, there are expectations on us from all different realms. Like if we're a parent, there are things that we can't do, or CPS will show up at our house. That is a box. But what are you doing inside of that box? Because you still have the space inside of that box to parent your child in the way that you see fit to this extent, right? Of CPS won't show up in my door. Like that's my limit, but you can still do all of these things inside of it. And so I think it's the same as the classroom is yes, you do have to stay inside of this box that's been given to you so that you're meeting the standards, the external standards that are given. However, I'd like to challenge the thinking that you can do nothing of your own inside that box, because you can paint however you want inside that box and meet those standards. I mean, the standards are set, but the manner in which you get to those standards are your own. And I think that's it's a framing it differently, just reframe the concept.
And I do believe that educators after this year are just frustrated. I think it's been such a difficult year.
Like everything that they're feeling is so valid.
So valid. Yeah. And I don't know that there's necessarily a quick fix for that, because I think mindset might come in a month and a half when we're getting a break in the education world a little bit. And not all educators get that, the summer off. I understand that too, but being able to find time and time for yourself, and then back to what you said earlier, and finding self-acceptance on these are boxes that I can actually check, and these are boxes that I can't, and putting your best out there and your best being received. And I know everyone also has arguments about, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z, but sometimes I think that we put these ideas in our own head of what we actually have to do. But if we were to take that heaviness off and lift our ideas and our dreams and work through it differently, like what would ideal world look like? And then how can I bridge those gaps? Like real life is that I've got to check these boxes in a perfect classroom. This is what I would love to accomplish. How do I just fill in those gaps? What gaps can I fill in, and what gaps do I need to kind of make decisions on?
Yeah.
And I think that still links.
Totally. And that was something that I worked with when I was leading the staff that I was leading, was we had to meet a set of minimum standards in early education, right? We have to do these things in order to retain our license. And there were things in there that, especially when I was working with centers that we were getting them licensed, things that they never had to do in the past, right? And now they're coming in saying, well, if I do that, it will ruin all of these things. I will no longer be able to do those things. And again, that was a reframing, right? The activity, whatever that activity is, and you could even change it in some cases, the activity or the standard or the box or the limitation that's being given to you, whatever you're expected to do from external sources, the activity is the container for the relationship, not the other way around. So you can use that activity in whatever manner you want to do. So for example, a very tangible example was, one thing that was required of us with our accreditation was to do formal assessments. Well, the type of school that we were in, we didn't do formal assessments. They didn't align with our pedagogy, right? We were Reggio Emilia, so we were looking for observational, anecdotal, ongoing assessments. But in order to retain accreditation, we had to do these formal assessments, right? Can you tell me the letters of the alphabet? Can you spell your name? Can you whatever, right? And there were teachers that were just like, this is not who we are. Okay. And I get that. And I agree. However, it's about the relationship that you, one, have with the child, and then two, are building inside of that activity, not about the activity itself. And I think if we can view it in that way, that was a huge shift for these teachers. It's like, forget the activity, forget, having to ask them if they know other letters and then checking the little boxes. What are you doing to build a relationship with them in that activity? And just framing it in that way was a big shift, a big mindset shift, a simple concept that led to a big mindset shift, right? And then gave them the ability to go, okay, maybe this isn't as limiting as I thought that it was, because it's about how you bring it to the child, to the learner.
Mindset. And I think when you're frustrated, that might be the hardest thing to change.
Of course.
So I think, a whole nother Zoom or LinkedIn Live, whatever actually works, could be on, like, how do we help people shift their mindset? Because I think that that's crucial. But and one of the things that I think is impactful in shifting mindset in a team environment, because I get to work with teams, I know that you do as well, is how do we support each other? In ideal self world, if I were to write all of my ideal life assessments, like, this is what I would like for my life to look like, these are the boxes I would like to check, and I were to put it on a poster and I were to put it on the wall, and you were to get to look at it, what would you say? And I know that sometimes it's really easy to be like, yeah, that's kind of silly, Julie, I don't know about that. That's stupid, you're never going to accomplish that. But if we were to just support each other, right? Like, hey, great job. Hey, let me help you with a connection to that person doing that. And I honestly wish that there was this moment that all of the people in my life, like my top LinkedIn connections, my top like Facebook followers, like, if I could just see your poster, what does your poster look like? What does your ideal self poster look like? I wish we could like make them and put them up for a day so we could all just like browse. And then I want to say things like, you can do this, because that's what we need, right? We need people who are going to encourage us in dreaming big. In pushing ourselves to be who we already are inside. And that's one of the biggest differences that I get to do as a coach, right? Like I'm not a counselor, I'm not certified for those pieces. And I think there is a place for counselors and therapists. But I also believe that there's a place for a coach and a consultant. And the biggest difference is that in counseling, you know, I'm helping you with issues that I am not going to be helping you with in coaching. In coaching, I am literally taking what's already inside of you and bringing it out. Like what already is there, how can we grow that? How can I give you the power to grow that and make your best self? And I think that that's what I would challenge every leader to look at their people and do is, hey, what does your ideal self look like? And then how does that fit into our team? And then if we were to push farther, which I love doing like goal setting challenges with teams, like let's pick a focus phrase as a group, like a group of 80. Okay, we're gonna split up into small groups. What is our focus gonna be? Like I love being able to hear in a perfect world, what do you wish your focus was? If we had the ideal world and ideal environment in our workspace, what would our focus be? And then how do we bring our team to that? If you thought your focus was going to be impeccable communication and people walking in the door and feeling like they could give you ideas and not get shut down, like how do we get there? Because teaching our teams to think that way is what's going to grow us in business. But that does take relationships and that does take leadership that's willing to look at the boxes that you're checking. For sure.
Yeah. And I think I love what you said about like the value of a coach and what it brings out from inside of you. And so I love when I get to do coaching with clients or with teams or with schools. But one of my favorite things one of my favorite conversations, I was working with a private school and we were essentially overhauling their kind of their marketing, but really what does it look like when you're from the outside looking in? So how are we presenting ourselves? That was what we were working on. And we just shifted how they were being presented. And they saw like a huge shift, a huge change in people coming in and, you know, leads and new students and new families, et cetera. And I remember them coming back and being like, thank you, Chelsea, for, you know, all that you've done. And I was able to say, I didn't change anything that you were already doing. All I did was focus on it. I mean, I didn't go in there and say, you need to change these 200 things and make sure you do all this different. You are the same school that you were then that you are now. You already had the practices, the policies, the whatever in place. All we needed to do was focus on it and bring it out. And so I think that's the very same with students or with coaching clients or whatever is it's not about, we got to change all of these things in you before you can do anything, before you can achieve your dreams or be your ideal self or whatever. It's we need to bring out the things that you're already doing. And this vision board concept that you're talking about, I love that because how often do we have these things that we want to do? Like for me, I really, really want to coach more people. Okay. And I don't say that out loud because it's scary. And because there's all of these, you can't do that for that. You can't do this. You can't do that. Right. I want to work with parents who are having children who are struggling with these things. I want to work with other entrepreneurs. I want to do all these things, but I've never thrown it out on a public vision board because it's scary. But what you're saying there is, what if we did that? Like, what if we threw those things out to our people and then you were able to come back to me and say, I see these things in you and I support that and I can connect you with this person and let's do that. And then I did the same for you. Like think of the shift because sometimes all you need is to get out of your head just for a second and hear someone else validate, hey, that's a really cool thing that could actually work. And you're like, really? Like that's the value of that.
Well, and I remember sitting in a professional development, like year 6 of teaching, and someone asked us, you know, what's on your bucket list? And I was like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know because I am so wrapped up in living day to day and surviving right now that I have forgotten to look to the future. And there's a lot of value in what you said about don't focus so much on just the goal that you forget to love on this journey, because let's talk about self-acceptance, right? Like you definitely are going to need that in your journey if you're going to make that happen, or you're going to feel like a failure before you ever reach your goal. And Lord knows that that's definitely something that I've struggled through as well. But if we can train our teams to think bigger and think with heart, and then we can accept their heart, think through the relationship that will foster when you understand that the secretary at the front of your school has dreams of being a teacher someday. Think about what that would be like to understand that, you know, that teacher wants to retire and be a full-time grandma and have a side business of X, Y, and Z, right? Like us supporting each other and not letting us get so wrapped up in what real world right now looks like, I think is impactful. And one of the things that you said in the post, because we said, hey, we could talk about this, was attunement. And so I want to venture into that for just 2 seconds. And so Dr. John Townsend is the attunement king. So go read anything of his, okay? And you'll get much more well fleshed out information than what I'm going to share with you. But the idea of attunement is to sit with someone and just emotion to emotion, be with them, not offering, here's how you fix this. Here's how you do this. And let me tell you something, I am a habitual fixer. It started in childhood, and then you're a teacher, so you're like a fixer, right? Like
totally.
VBS world, you're a fixer, like just name it, right? Like I am a fixer, and I've had to really work on my attunement skills because I want to offer, hey, what if you did this? When in all actuality, as a coach, and really in helping your team, if you're always giving somebody else that, hey, you should do this, you're not teaching them to live an ideal self world. You're making them dependent on you. And if you want your team to be able to dream big, grow your business because they came up with a really cool plan because they were thinking outside the box because you taught them to do that, right? You've got to foster that behavior. And that really starts with attunement. That starts with, you're having a great day and I want to feed off of that and I want to hear from you, or that was a really hard meeting. Let me hear from you and why that was hard, and just listen and support and match emotion to emotion rather than let me give you some fixes, or let's look at how you should restructure what you're thinking right now, because then that's going to shut people down. And as leaders, I don't think that is a concept that is as universal as it should be.
I agree. And I think like attunement, when I'm hearing that, is a lot of times when I was working inside of a team, we talked about creating a safe space, right? You could come into the space. Well, we created the space for each other. We came in and created this space where you could say pretty much anything you wanted as long as it was remotely respectful, right? I am really frustrated with, I can't believe this happened, or I loved this so much, or whatever. And it was the same thing. It's not us going back and saying, well, I think you were frustrated because you did this, this, and this, and that's what led to your frustration. It's validating their experience in their experience and saying, I validate that you were frustrated in that, totally understand that. And I, and not giving them, not looking to give them anything in return or change their experience, because I was reading one of my very favorite books that a good friend gave me and now I'm obsessed with is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And she talks about in there a very simple phrase that now I'm using all the time is feelings are meant to be felt. Feelings are meant for feeling, right? And so often the only time that we allow feelings to be felt are when they are good feelings. And then the rest of them, we don't talk about those, right? And so we want to create a safe space where all the feelings are meant to be felt and finding what that looks like for students, for teams, for me, for you, for every single human in the world. What does it look like to get to that place? And how are we providing attunement for each other to allow for that?
Right. Well, and we started this whole thing with self-acceptance, right? You talked about your Mel Robbins example, who I also love. And reality is, if you're always making someone feel like they need to be fixed, you are encouraging an issue with self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Right. Matter of fact, one of the most difficult pieces, I think, as a leader is to just sit in silence with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that in an attunement world, silence is okay,
Yeah.
is a mentality that helps emotion to emotion. I'm just going to sit with you in the well. And Dr. John Townsend talks about that, just sitting in the well with somebody so that they're not alone in, I'm frustrated. You know what? You have a right to be frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
That was awful, or what a X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
I want to share this with you. Daniel Siegel did some neurological research on attunement and the developing mind, how relationships in the brain interact to shape who we are. And what they learned was, or what he learned and published was, that the idea of social and emotional relationships shape how our brains develop. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, okay, here we go. We're developing brains.
Yep.
You and I are having these conversations all the time. But the way our minds construct reality and how well or how, awful we are at adapting to reality and the psychological stressors throughout life can link to just how relationships are being taken care of or not taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So as a leader, when you're digging through, how can these people know that what they're saying is important to me? It's attunement.
Yeah.
If you want your team to be able to dream big and think outside the boxes that are being externally given to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to think outside, how do we develop things to check that box that don't cripple us?
Right.
It is pushing your team to dream big and think through ideal self. And it is supporting them through attunement and developing those relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's modeling that behavior.
Right.
Because if you're going to take that all the way back down, right, if you're in the classroom or with your own children, I mean, it's about modeling that behavior. And so to the smallest piece, it's about allowing yourself to experience frustration. And that's really challenging, especially, as a leader, especially when I was originally, I was going to say young leader, but I guess I'm still young. So when I was
you are
first leading, I don't really know.
We have to still be young. Come on.
It's fine.
I'm in the category with you. So let's stay young. Okay.
Okay. It was really hard for me to be comfortable enough with what I was doing and my team or whatever, to be able to show them negative emotions, like to be able to say, I am really frustrated with whatever, to an appropriate degree. Right. But I think that's important to model, is that, yeah, I get frustrated too. I may react poorly as well. And modeling that, instead of only showing your happy side or your positive side or whatever for your team or your classroom or your family or whatever, is a really important part of this as well. Because I was having a conversation the other day with, no matter how many times you say whatever you're going to say to the person that you're talking to, you will never change someone's neural pathway with words. You will only ever change what they're experiencing with your actions, and then their actions, and then that repeated. So no matter how many times you say it, you're never going to change it just by speaking it.
Right. Well, and let's talk about the power of relationship building again, because that's who I am. And I have to talk about that for 2 seconds. Right. So I share out when I get to speak. If you're not willing to give, you're not going to get, right.
Yeah.
We talk about my nice friends. You and I talked about this last time. I have a great friend. She's really, really nice. She's always positive and everything's always wonderful. And she's the very last person that I would ever share my crap with. Therefore, she never gets to know me, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's the reality.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you've got to be real, which links to, sometimes it's okay to just be real and say, look, guys, here's where we really are. Here's how I really am. Because if you're wanting someone to share with you how they really are, you need to be ready to share with them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of value in, again, like we said earlier, don't burn yourself to keep everyone else warm. But there is a time and space that you do need to be a leader when everyone else is not okay.
Yeah.
But there's also a line. Granted, I know they're within reason, but there's a line of honesty that's really impactful in building relationships with your team.
Yeah.
And it has to be in a space that you are willing to share safely, so that they can also share with you. You've got to attune with them, and you've got to be willing to support them, so that they feel like they can share. But I think it's important that you share first.
Yeah. And I think, so if we were to take like all of these really big concepts that we've been talking
I
about,
know.
I mean,
I
they
know.
all interlink with each other. I
They
mean,
do.
we've talked about
A
ideal
lot of
self
things.
versus real self, you know, and what that means to be able to dream big, but also to be present, right? You're like, it's the like this paradox that we're constantly stuck in, is there's
Right.
always going to be two pieces. We want to dream big. We want to propel ourselves forward. We also want to be present with who we are. We want to set goals and do these really great things, but we also want to accept ourselves for who we are right now in the process. I mean, then we want to have others be honest with us and really share with us, but we also have to make sure that we are really honest with them.
It feels a little bit like COVID protocol when you say it like
really
that. Like,
does.
I don't know. You can wear your mask, but don't wear your mask too much.
That's like, that's the real problem, is do these things, but also don't do these things and fine. And it's a paradox. But I think the beautiful part of that, and one thing that I push a lot, is humanize the process. There is no one size fits all for any of these things, right? Everything is unique to you. How well you do always living for your next goal is dependent upon you, right? I find that if I'm constantly focused on my next goal, I'm missing out on where I am right now. And that's negatively impactful to me. But it might impact you completely different. And that's why I think these paradoxes are okay, because no one is going to experience it in the same way. So allowing ourselves to be uniquely human in this is the most important part. So that's why I feel like, even though we may have said some COVID related controversial, like do this, but don't do that, do this and that, right? I think the paradoxes are okay, because each person that's experiencing them is uniquely human, and let's humanize the whole situation.
Right. And I think in reflection of today, if the big takeaways and the big challenges that I'm trying to share out with you are these, okay? You need to build relationships with your people, and relationships mean that sometimes you have to tune and listen. It also means that you need to encourage. We need to encourage others to dream big and look into who they can be to bring out the best in them. Because if they're their best, they're going to be their best for your team. So if I could break it down into those two pieces, it is build relationships through attunement and encouragement by helping others live in an ideal self world. Those would be my challenges.
So if people are looking to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
Well, julieschniers.com, and my name is JuliEschniers.
I still don't know how to spell it.
I know. I married a German man. And you know, my maiden name was Upton. Like, it was so easy.
So much easier.
Schniers. But I'm also on LinkedIn, and you probably can spell it wrong and it will help you find me. And I have 2 hearts around my name in LinkedIn, because there's a lot of heart in everything that I do. And then of course I'm on Facebook. I don't do hearts in that because that would be weird. And I have on Instagram, and I'm kind of on Twitter. I'm not as good at Twitter because I like writing a lot, and Twitter doesn't like giving me characters.
Twitter is not like all your words.
It is not like all my words, which I understand. I might just not be a Twitter girl. I might be accepting that lately. But LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you can find me. And then of course on my website. And I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you and your team. My heart is in professional development and facilitating workshops on concepts just like this, relationship building, goal setting, helping your team be their best. So if I can help anybody, let me know. And of course, as always, Chelsea, thank you, because I'm a huge fan of yours. I think everything that you put out is also full of heart. You should have like 10 hearts around your name. And I think that anyone who gets to work with you is blessed. So I feel blessed just getting to have this conversation with you finally.
I think I am feeling blessed that we did this whole thing. Right. There was not one glitch, not one.
That the internet in my small town's working. Yep. I'm real glad.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to have to come back and do a conversation around mindset, because That's
Yeah,
apparently
let's
the
do
answer
it.
to everything. And now we know how to make
Yes.
something work. So
Yeah, not that I'm
thank
an
you.
expert on mindset, but I would for sure will share mine with yours. Yeah, we can do
Perfect.
mindset.
I love that.
Yep.
So
Just
thank you to
realness.
everybody who hung out with us and listened to this.
Yeah.
Be sure to go back and check out the situation that happened earlier today.
Just for fun.
Just for
Lots of
fun.
fun.
Just like to throw some
Good
fun
laugh.
into your weekend. So we will see you guys next time, and have an amazing weekend, because what could go wrong?